I don't know if anyone knows.
Probably last.
All right, we're going.
We were doing 20s and it was fine.
We ruined Travis's intro, I think.
Oh, no,
All
no.
good. Welcome. We've got a mid-conversation start. That's good. To our show this week. Episode 189 of Titanforge podcast. I'm Dratnos, joined by Tettles and Trell as always. And this week's special guest, Mistweaver extraordinaire, Megasett. Welcome.
Thank you.
This week we've got a few different topics to cover. We've got, I guess, there's some general 10.2 stuff to discuss. The raid testing, Mythic Plus testing. We also had the EVE Ascension tournament that we mentioned last week. Happened last weekend now, which you were competing in as well. So we'll talk with you a little bit about that. But first of all, a couple of small topics. I guess just starting off with raid testing, which I did, Meg, you did. Tettles, Trell, did you guys do any raid testing?
Not this time.
Not this week.
Okay. So today we did Mythic, Laradar, and Volcaros. Megasett, what was your read on those bosses?
We had called it on Volacross before we were actually able to test anything because of the soak issue.
Same.
I think that's going to be a good boss. Like, I enjoyed it on Heroic when we did it, and then adding on the Mythic difficulty, obviously you get the extra mechanic and a little bit more to heal. So I'm looking forward to it, but it's kind of hard to say considering it was bugged. And then for Laradar, I am historically someone that really dislikes healing friendly NPCs, especially in raid fights. But I actually think that this one's going to be fun. I just would like them to add the nameplates into the roots, so it's a little bit easier to target them and to heal them. But I'm excited for both of them, actually.
Yeah, me too. I thought Laradar was a cool kind of dance and a cool combo of mechanics that were mechanics, and then that ones that were numbers mechanics. So that should be pretty fun to actually test out, and a good way of integrating healers. Because I think it is usually pretty cringe the last few fights they've made where you have to like heal a friendly. But in this fight, there's sort of some play to it where you have to damage it first and then heal it, and when you heal it matters, and you kind of keep healing them when they're even in the middle of the room. So I think that'll be pretty interesting. The other stuff that has... Oh, go ahead, Charles.
I was just going to ask about Laradar. Was space an issue on that fight? I caught a little bit of the testing on streams, but was it like shrinking throughout the entire encounter, or was it pretty free?
There was definitely some space management going into it, but I think it was mostly on the tanks and where he was charging.
Yeah, there were a lot of different mechanics that kind of filled up the room with gunk, but you could also clear a lot with the people in the middle of the room. So
I saw that they hotfixed the textures on that fire mid fight.
They're this like dark brown now, which I think is good. Like their goal is to not have red on red, right? So all the ground is dark brown with like a red outline instead.
Yeah,
I think it is a little bit more visible than if it was just straight up red, because now it's like red swirlies, brownish black ground, and then like greenish brown if the ground is safe. I don't know. I mean, it's still not easy to see exactly what's happening on the ground, but I think it's probably an upgrade. I'm not sure.
It'd be nice, I think, if the edge was a little bit brighter, like if it kind of glowed a little bit more, because there's times in Melee where it's really hard to kind of differentiate between what's the ground and what's a Mage Flame Strike and what's an actual mechanic. So
yeah, I found this to be a lot less bad than Smolderon for that, but it was definitely still not great. Not great visual clarity.
I think I mean Smolderon's red on red was a bit different because you're trying to dodge like small red swirlies right on top of that weird outer edge.
Yeah, Smolderon had like 7 different red mechanics, whereas this fight only has 2 or 3, which... we've also had Throne of the Tides come out for M+ testing. All the other dungeons were testable before, although there's been Everbloom updates too, but Throne of the Tides just testable now. I have yet to test this. Megasett, have you tested any Throne of the Tides?
Yeah, I plugged one like right before this, just a quick
Plugged
20.
it.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Plugged it. Oh
No, that's good.
God.
That's actually... I think not enough people test pugging on the PTR, because like these mechanics work pretty differently sometimes, depending on how coordinated your group is. What was your impression of this place?
It's kind of a mixed bag. I think that there is a lot of casting that goes on. There's a lot of mobs like in the beginning, like that first hallway as you go in. There's 2 healers that will kind of just spam cast their heal and a lightning bolt or water bolt or whatever. So a lot of kicks just in that first area, also in the end of the wing headed towards what is the last boss. The little goblin pack at the end there. There's like 6 mobs and they all just spam cast on everybody, and it's kind of a mess. So not looking forward to that portion of it. And then the Lady Nazjar, that boss is kind of an ad boss. There wasn't really much to it, it didn't seem like. I'm curious to see how the ads scale in keys on Tyran versus Fort. And I'm also curious to see how groups manage to do it. Like, I think Death Knights are going to have a really easy time with it, whereas groups that maybe don't have any range kicks are going to need to send out the melee, and they'll have to kick and kind of like slowly gather everything up. But it's a boss with an immunity phase, which we all have our own opinions about those. But
is it like percent based or is it time based immunities? Because if
couldn't
it's going to do
tell.
multiple but high keys, that's going to be really obnoxious.
Yeah, I think we had 3 phases and a 20 with no affixes, so
Oh
Huh.
god,
it's either 2 or 3, I don't remember.
if it ends up being like 5 phases at like a high key level, if it's not percent based, oh god, man.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
I
But
was
during the actual boss, there's not a whole lot to do, actually.
I was watching Dorky, and it was actually he ran it back to back. He ran it once on a Brewmaster Monk and once on a Vengeance Demon Hunter, and it was quite interesting how different the Brewmaster was compared to the Vengeance Demon Hunter. The Silent Sigil was very, very strong in this dungeon.
Oh,
Yeah. Silent Sigil and Mass Grip have got to be the 2 like premium things that a tank can do to make. I guess a Warrior AoE interrupt as well, probably very good here. Yeah.
I mean, there's just like so many casters, and I think that this is a specific situation where, like you're saying, pugging might actually end up being way different than like how coordinated groups end up doing these dungeon, because like the trash packs have so many casters on your tank.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll get the chance to test some of this a little bit before next episode and have some more thoughts about it. But after Vortex Pinnacle, I'm a little bit hesitant to be excited about any of the Cataclysm dungeons, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Before podcast started, I asked Meg how she felt about it. Her response was, "It's a Cata dungeon."
Yeah.
It's the most honest answer I could give.
It's a Cataclysm dungeon.
You know, speaking of Vengeance stuff on that dungeon, Vengeance has 2 charges of Silent Sigil now.
Wait, do they really?
That is insane. Yeah, there's a new talent that like doubles all your sigils. You just have 2 charges of everything.
Okay, now that's kind of OP.
Have you done some testing on it? Can you play 2 Sigil chain? Like, can you play Sigil chains as well, or is that not easy?
I haven't tested on it this week at all yet, but
Okay.
Well, because it was bugged where you had like 1,000% chance to parry. I just wanted to wait till that was fixed.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah, Vengeance is looking cool with all the new stuff they gave it.
All right, let's move on to talking a little bit about Eve Ascension tournament from last weekend, which Meg, you played in. So what was the process for you guys of like setting up the team and deciding to compete in this? How did all that go at the start?
I think that I was the last one confirmed for the team for like coming on as the healer. I believe that Corey and them had all played together in the previous one, which I didn't participate in at all. So I was excited to have a team because I wasn't planning on doing it. I was like, oh yeah, you know, it's a cool event, it's a cool initiative, and I'm excited to watch it, but I didn't think that I was going to end up on a team. So I was excited that she had asked me and that we ended up putting a group together. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a qualifier into top 4 played on the actual weekend, right? So what was the qualifying stage like? Was that a fun process? Or I know different MDI and TGP qualifiers have had different opinions from the people that have played in them.
So playing together and actually doing the keys together for qualifiers was a lot of fun, but we ran into an issue with scheduling. Trying to get everyone kind of in one spot for 2 whole weeks to do all of our keys for however many hours a day. But then we ran into the big issue of doing homework keys to find a key that we needed for qualifiers. We didn't find like an Eltheris or something until the Monday before qualifiers closed, and Cherry had work and had to work late, and there was just kind of like this added stress of having to find every key to even do it, to even get it on the board. So I think that I know that getting tournament realm access is kind of difficult, especially for so many people. But having qualifiers on live created some issues that we weren't really ready for, I guess.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the qualifiers, you had to do all of the dungeons on both Tyrannical and Fortified 2 weeks back to back. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the highest cumulative score, and the 4 teams that had the highest cumulative score were qualifying.
Yes. Yeah.
2 weeks on live is also a long time.
That's a lot of.
I mean, it's basically
of
like
keys.
doing a title push, but all in. You have to do it in the 2 weeks. You can't come back on a third or fourth week or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were planning on like, and then there was a little bit of a miscommunication with when qualifiers actually closed. We thought we were going to have the Monday before the next reset, but that wasn't the case. So we had to like scramble on the last day and get everyone together. Okay, we just have to complete one and we're fine.
Yeah, that's which okay, here's somewhat related. If you're ever going for the M plus title, that always closes the Monday night at 10 p.m. You cannot do a last minute
Pacific.
key after 10 p.m. Pacific. So
I didn't know that.
we learned that the hard way. As one member of our group in Shadowlands Season 4 was 2 points under the threshold, and we had a gambit in our bags. Then we 10:30 p.m. We were like, oh, let's do it, and it was closed. It was over. So
That's
always
why,
fun to see when those timers cut off.
I think Yoda's group that he was tanking for last season, they ended up getting like rank 1, but it didn't like officially count as rank 1. Not like the title, but like the rank 1 group. They were like rank 1 group in terms of score on Raider.io, but they ended up not getting it because it already closed or something.
That's tragic.
So how did you, as a team, like decide what comp you were going to play, and did you have any strat going on with that in different dungeons or anything like that, or was there a tension between playing like meta comps versus what you guys are comfortable with?
We pretty much kind of laid it out all on the table. Like, okay, I can play Mistweaver. I have a Paladin. I'm not super comfortable on it, but I have it if we want it. And then Candace was between Bear and Vengeance, and Cherry was between Feral and Ret. So we ended up sticking with what we performed with, like Bear, Mistweaver, all of that. We had Candace on her DH for like half of qualifiers, and we're like, okay, we're doing routes that, we're doing bear pulls with, and it might be a little bit easier to kind of go based off of that. And there wasn't like a whole lot of. We decided we wanted Cherry on her Ret for the Paladin utility that I wasn't bringing. So every time we were like, oh, do you want to play Feral for this? There wasn't really I don't want to be rude to Ferals, but there wasn't really a reason to not bring her Paladin instead of her Feral, because you lose Bop and Sack and Bubble and everything that Paladins bring, and we already had a Druid that was Bear, so it wasn't like there was a reason for her to play Feral. So we ended up sticking with Paladin for most of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mark of the Wild would have been big, but you already had it, so yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I guess Beerez. No, you have Beerez on.
Paladin does it too.
Never mind.
Or I guess they both do it either way. Yeah.
How was routing? Like, obviously, whenever you do a tournament like this, especially whenever you're doing like the qualifier, a lot of people, like a lot of these people who are like, a lot of the people who participate in this tournament are 3,800, and they're used to doing routes with very specific compositions. Did you guys have to change your routes at all, like based off of some of the stuff that your comp could or couldn't do?
Yeah, so we ended up changing our Oldemon. Corey pretty much went through and did like a base route for every dungeon. Like, okay, this is what we're thinking. We can change it if we want to. And then for Oldemon specifically, which wasn't actually in the tournament, I actually got to use a button that I never used on my monk before. I used Disable.
Okay.
Yeah,
because for the snake boss, yeah, we weren't initially going to be pulling all of those ads into the boss because we're like, we don't have a slow. And I'm like, well, we kind of do. So I ended up, in practice, I ended up disabling every single mob we brought in, and then I would have to spin to keep it active. So I'm kind of sad that we didn't get to do Oldemon in the actual tournament because I thought it was funny, but there was definitely a couple things where like, okay, we don't have a consistent enough slow or a consistent enough whatever to do a route that we would maybe do on live, or just comfort levels.
So wait, I have a question. So in PvE, does disable actually root if you press it twice on the same target, or is that a PvP thing?
That's a PvP thing, and I
Okay.
don't even know if that's still a thing.
I don't know if that's still a thing either. It's
I can't remember either. It's been so long.
Monk hamstring gotta be one of the worst buttons ever.
Dude, and it doesn't do damage or anything, so there's no threat, but it's a single application on every. I had like 6 things to disable, and I'm like, okay, 6 dead globals, let's go.
Yeah, like holy shit.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like when you spin, does it refresh its original duration, or is
Yes.
it just okay? That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I was
I think
trying. So I
pretty
was
good is-
trying to like blackout kick and stuff, but sometimes my cleaves wouldn't hit it, so then I would have the durations off, and I'd have to spin anyway, and I'm still trying to heal. Like it was super scuffed, but it ended up working out.
Pretty good
Yeah,
is very generous here, Trell, I think.
Hey, it's better than nothing. That boss is insanely hard for a tank player trying to like bust into high keys. You know,
Yeah.
that's really good that you guys were able to do something like that.
Yeah, the like meta comp solution I think is your mage talent slow. Let me tell you, I've done that dungeon like 6 times, and my mage has never remembered to talent slow on that. So
I always spoil my tank on that fight. I keep everything slowed.
oh yeah, well that's because you are tank swapped to mage.
'Cause I'm a tank
so-
player. Yep.
Yeah,
that's
you're
true.
always thinking, how can I help the tank? Which need more mages to do that. That's not a natural mage thought if they didn't start as a tank.
You know, it's funny because like sometimes I have to be greedy on purpose, and it's really hard with like the opposite ingrained stuff in my brain from tanking for so long. You have to greed sometimes playing mage. It's interesting. Anyway,
All right, next question I guess is: do you have any goals to go and like to play any other tournaments or esports stuff? Any MDI, TGP aspirations, anything like that? And did the answer change at all based off your experience from playing in this?
I think my answer would still be no. And I don't think that it changed because of Eve. It's a huge time commitment. Like
It is.
it's
Yeah.
so much time put into the game, which I put a decent amount into the game anyway. So it would be hypocritical for me to be like, wow, they play a lot, because I do too. But the level of commitment, I could see myself maybe doing it like once or twice, but long term, I think I would definitely kind of get over the time commitment. And then I still end up wanting to play the thing that I enjoy, which is Mistweaver, and we all
Mhm.
know how how that goes with things with MDI. So probably not, but maybe if the opportunity arose, I would give it a try, but not something I'm actively pursuing.
Would you
No.
do the Eve Ascension tournament again?
Oh yeah.
what if Wave the Crane meta came back and Mistweaver was the move?
I'm not gonna lie, I like the current version of Monk more than the Way the Crane version.
Really? Okay.
Because we kind of have, I mean, well, think about it, right? We had fish feasts in BFA. We had
True.
so much mana so quickly after spending a quarter of your pool. Now we have the new Manatee, but like I loved Way the Crane and I really wanted it back all the way through Shadowlands until the current Monk came out. I was like, never mind, this is way better.
Gotcha. I haven't played it at all in Dragonflight, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, let's actually talk a little bit about Mistweaver and the whole Mistweaver situation, which was going to be later, but I think now is a good time to talk about this because I don't know. That's been, I think, the thing you've been known for ages has been logging on and playing the Mistweaver. What is it about the spec that has such appeal to you that makes you like? Have you enjoyed every iteration of it since then, or is there some part of the kit that's been fun? Because it's historically just one of the least played specs in the game.
Monk is like one of
Monk
the
as a class
lowest, like-
is,
I-
yeah.
yeah,
I think
well,
it's
Monk-
first play class, yeah.
yeah.
So it's kind of a weird question because like
Yeah.
back in BFA, I think about it all the time because people do ask. I don't know why I started playing Monk. I have zero idea. Like I played Fire Mage really casually in Legion, and I had a Monk but didn't really play it. And then BFA came around. I'm like, yeah, why not? I had no idea what I was doing. But then I had friends that were like, oh, you should stream Monk and do that because no one else is doing it. I was like, yeah, it is what it is. So I just kind of stuck with it because a friend had suggested that I stream because there was no one else doing it, and that's kind of where that went. But after playing the current version, I realized how unfun Monk was actually in Shadowlands as a whole, because I'm sitting here, I'm like, how did I play it for that long? Like, all I do is push Fallen Order and push Spinning Crane Kick. Like, is Monk as bad as everyone says it is? In Shadowlands, in Mythic Plus, kinda. but like I don't know how it feels like Holy Priest looking back. So I don't really know like why I stuck with it for so long in Shadowlands. I guess a branding thing, but yeah, I don't know.
Stockholm
this is definitely the
syndrome.
best version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do I keep playing WoW?
I don't know.
Well, let's get to the.
You got me thinking like how I started playing Monk. I think it was kind of similar, except I was like kind of fascinated by the system of stagger at the time. Like my guild needed a tank, and I was like, oh, Brewmaster looks kind of cool. I'll learn that. And like that's how I became a Monk player, I guess. But it's just as simple as that. I think a lot of people will just land in their class and don't really know exactly why. I feel like that's got to be pretty common.
Yeah, I do think it is interesting as well, the amount of it being like a good content niche to be, one of one Mistweaver or one of a few Mistweavers versus being one of the droves of bottom rerollers.
Yeah,
that's also some
impact.
Upside. Yeah,
I will say though, if Mistweaver ever becomes good, then you're right in the sweet spot.
I'm ready. I've been ready for like 6 years, and it hasn't happened yet, but it's gonna happen. I promise.
I don't know if you've had this experience as well. I always feel like every patch cycle, we get patch notes, and the initial patch notes look so good for Mistweaver. And then just like 2 weeks later, the axe comes out, and half of them are gone. And then 2 weeks later, it's just tragedy after tragedy for the spec. Yeah, but this time around, it's been holding, right? It's been holding reasonably good. We've been playing Mistweavers in my guild's testing. They've looked good.
Oh yeah, I saw Hasty. Hasty was pumping.
Yeah,
like
on
250 HPS.
The Mistweaver.
Yeah.
Great named character. Yeah.
I think the problem with that comes with what else we bring. Like if the HBS is good, sure, but Druid can also do that and also bring Mark and all of these other things. I think it's a little bit more than just numbers for Mistweaver, which is unfortunately all we brought for a really long time.
Well, Mistweaver got brought to the Race World first, this most recent tier, by Echo for not Chaos Brand, Mystic Touch buff, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was... I know Method ran one, right?
Oh, was it Method that
or
ran
is it Method?
Well, I think Echo had one
too. It was Thaner. I don't remember who he was with at the time.
I think Velo was playing one for Echo, but it wasn't their Mystic Touch either. They already had Mirez playing Brewmaster, so it was just a fourth healer flex pick. Was they swapped between
Thaner
Shaman
was,
and Mistweaver, right? In the situation.
Thaner was on for Vault for 10.0.
Okay, yeah,
that's my bad.
Yeah, well, something about Monk that I think is a little underrated too is that you also have like a 10-yard radius of increased healing and avoidance, which is pretty big, honestly. I think it's bigger than Mystic Touch in a lot of cases.
Yeah, so we bring 3 braid buffs, technically.
Yeah, that's how you should be pitching it. I think that's how you should be pitching out. We bring raid buffs to melee to make sure they don't die.
Yeah, and I mean, how often do you run through the range? Like, there's quite a few times where you're readjusting and you might drive by the range and give them the aura for a couple of seconds, or if you're all stacked for a mechanic.
I will say, I was going through some of our Q&A questions off Twitter, and there was a lot of questions about why you hate Caster Mistweaver.
Because it's not real. Because it doesn't exist. It's a PvP thing, and we don't differentiate in PvE.
I see. So that's
sort of like Caster Holy Paladin, right? Like it's a mirage.
Yeah.
Well,
because people, so the terms fist weaving, mistweaving, caster, melee, whatever you want to call it. There's all these different terms that mostly came from PvP because they do actually have 2 different builds that are, potentially competitive. But in all PvE content, we are considered melee. We get melee mechanics or healer mechanics, whichever. But we are always considered a melee by the game. When you're playing people, it doesn't matter because they can make their own decisions. But when you're playing the computer, there's always going to be that distinction for them, and it causes problems if you're baiting all of the range mechanics or the melee mechanics into the range.
I swear there was a fight. It was like Mythic Sylvanas or something where it was just awful to be a Mistweaver because you would get targeted by the range stuff and the melee stuff. Like the wailing arrow and the something. It was just like the one spec in the game that would just get the whole everything.
They ended up fixing that at one point, but there was a while there where they were getting the wailing arrow. I remember I got it on my monk a bunch, and then I went on my paladin and never got it. And I'm like, damn, I'm really lucky before realizing that I just wasn't flagged for it.
Yeah, even though both should be melee healers and get the same flag. So I don't know. I feel like that's another monk class-wide debuff, is that the likelihood of a bug existing for your spec is much higher than most other classes in the game.
I think that if we didn't have any bugs, it would just be odd. I know at least the roll bug has been a thing, and that's not even just Mistweaver, that's like every monk, but the roll bug has been a thing forever. There's been issues where we ended up getting a bug fix and we realized like, oh, this has actually existed for a long time. We have a bug right now with Nourishing Chi, one of our talents, that when Life Cocoon breaks, you get Nourishing Chi on everyone, which is a % hot increase. And it's kind of a big deal. We found it in the middle of season 2. It's been a bug since season 1, and no one knew because it's such a bad talent if it actually worked properly. So no one ran it. But we found a log from early in season 1 where someone took it by accident and it was working the way it's working now, and we're just like, oh, okay.
Monks are never bugged. That's another thing.
My blackout combo on Brewmaster was bugged all last season, and it was like bugged in a good way, where I couldn't mess it up, and it was so nice.
Hell yeah.
All right, so you were saying that you like the 10.2 PTR version of Monk quite a bit. We were talking before the show though about there being some weird perverse incentive where you get punished if you're playing well and you're getting a lot of like Vivify cleaves or something. Is that something? First of all, is that true? What exactly is it? And then is there a change or something you'd suggest for that, or any other things you'd like to see change about Mistweaver and 10.2?
So I haven't been like super involved with the math because I'm really bad at math, but just based off of what the theory crafters have been saying, the square root scaling with Vivify and the cleave is basically making an issue where if you have good RNG on Dancing Mist, which is a chance for it to replicate, and you get good resets on your Rising Sun kick and all of the other things that contribute to us having high renewing mist counts, the more that you have and then the more that you're maintaining, you're going to be doing less healing because of the way the new scaling is. So if you end up having good RNG and you get the good resets and you have, 17 renewing miss out, but you only have 11 people injured, you're going to be healing those 11 people for less than you would if you either didn't play well or didn't have good resets or anything like that. So it's making it more accessible and more consistent for like the low to mid tier player, but people like Swaggles and all of like the high end raiders, they're going to have a bit of a damper, I guess, on their healing like that.
Interesting.
That is my understanding of it.
How about, so one thing that this PTR cycle came and did was Atonement is getting a big buff for healing in 5-player content.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's anything similar to that Mistweaver would benefit from, or any way to make them more of a kind of mainstay of 5-player dungeon content? Any ability or any suggestions at all for that? Or I mean, of course, not our job to come up with those things, but if you've got any soapbox that you like to stand on about this, go ahead.
When it comes to like any ability, or just specifically like how we scale in 5-mans?
I guess
like
either
utility?
One, sure, yeah.
I mean, not so much of an issue now because of the new scaling with Vivify, but there was a big issue where prior to 10.0.7, I think, is when they put Shaylin's gift back in, which was the Legion artifact weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, the only AoE healing that we had was Chi-Chi, which is a 1-minute cooldown, or our Vivify Cleave. And they couldn't buff our Vivify Cleave for Mythic Plus because in Raid, you would just be ridiculous. Because then you're cleaving onto everyone, and that's where most of the healing was coming from. So we were being a little bit hamstrung in keys because of Raid, which is not a new thing. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
But it was really, really frustrating in a Mythic Plus setting where I'm like, I have no AoE healing, but they can't buff it because that would break it in Raid. And then, all the other things. But they put in some band-aids that ended up fixing that. The big things now, for like my soapbox, I have an ability called Soothing Mist, and I can't soothe mobs. That makes zero sense to me. That makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
I remember seeing a tweet from you about that. I totally agree. They should give you soothing of some sort.
Imagine if you had to channel on the mob and heal it to soothe it.
God.
I think that would be the most Mistweaver design of that I can think of.
Yeah. That would be.
It's gotta cost like triple the globals of another spec to do the same thing as well. That's just like typical monk.
I mean, do you think?
And then
do you think the utility is really what's holding it back? Because like pretty much every single season, it's either a Holy Paladin or a Resto Druid season.
Yeah.
Performance-wise, I don't think that the utility is holding it back.
Okay.
But I do think that the lack of utility, the fact that we're leather with normal melee range and, no externals, and we have no health and no armor, no
B-res.
sanctified
No
plates,
B-res, no
B-res.
lust,
I think
which
that
is unique among healers, I think. Yeah.
yeah, all of that kind of collectively turns people off of the spec. It's the same issue that Feral Druid had that we were talking about earlier with Eve. There's no reason to play Mistweaver unless you like it.
Sure.
There's no incentive. So I think like numerically we're fine and performance-wise we're fine, but there's no new players picking up Mistweaver because we don't have all of these quality of life things that we should have had by now. It does really feel like we're kind of a major patch or expansion behind in terms of design.
Yeah. I play the other side of Monk, Windwalker Brewmaster, it really does feel that way. Like the class tree just needs a complete overhaul. It's so bad. The short arms deal that all 3 specs have is really outdated now. Like most specs that are melee have 8-yard range on a lot of their spells. I don't know if you feel that a lot as Mistweaver. I'm sure you do.
Oh yeah. I think that we're punished even more than Paladin is for not being in melee. If I have too much downtime during my Celestial or whatever, that's it. No more healing for you, right? Go cast out of range, but it doesn't matter because it's not going to do very much, and then you can't catch back up because your hots are gone, and there goes your damage, and it's just like this big snowball that Paladin doesn't have to deal with, but they also have the extended range.
So do you think a lot of the reasons that we don't see more Mistweaver players is just perception, or is it because like it's hard to incentivize something that is, almost at face value worse in most ways?
I think both. I think the history of it is definitely harmful, even if it's not necessarily reflective of how it actually performed in the past. But then there's also no reason to play it. It's not that it can't do the content, but it's harder than just playing Paladin. So
what if you had your monk statue channeling somebody and you gave them 20% DR passively?
I was
then
literally
maybe
about
I
to
would
ask.
take a capstone.
Yeah, what do you think about the statues?
Dude.
They're so bad. I tried. Oh my god. I tried making White Tiger work, and it just didn't. I thought maybe like in season 1 with the tree boss in Academy, I'm like, yeah, I'll get Ox statue to help my tank get threat. It died immediately. I was like, well, okay, that didn't really work.
Oh, yep. Sounds about right.
So do you guys not take any of your capstones?
Not in Keys. In Raid we take Jade statue, but in Keys we don't take any.
Windwalker and Brewmaster take the White Tiger statue, but it's so clunky.
I don't.
You have to like. Oh, you
they
just
can't
never take
stop,
it?
dude. There's no police that show up at your house if you don't take it. Like it's like a 300 DPS increase, and it's so annoying. I'm not gonna take that.
It is so annoying.
It's
like
bad,
you move stuff off of it one time, it's automatically useless.
They reworked the monk tree at some point, didn't they?
They moved things around a little. They added Yu'lon's
tiny
Grace and the dodge thing.
Oh,
which
the passives.
I think Yu'lon's Grace is actually
is
pretty good. Yeah, but the dodge one is kind of weird for the non-brewmasters.
Yeah, there's just like an option to take dampen or 10% dodge chance as all 3 specs.
Okay, so this is tragic, I think. That's what I'm learning right now.
Yeah. But those statues
Can we mention Fort Brew as well?
Oh,
Yeah.
Throw that in there
definitely.
with things that need deleted.
I'm all on board for exposing all these things. Fort Brew is like the worst defensive in the game, and it's like a 7-minute cooldown for Mistweaver as well, baseline?
6. Yeah.
6 because of how it functions.
Wait,
for
do you not get
Brewmaster.
CDR?
I do not.
They
And
do
if
not.
I want it to be a 4-minute cooldown, I have to spend an extra talent point, and it's still 4 fucking minutes long.
Yeah.
It's like 20% HP or some shit, isn't it?
20% HP, 20% DR for what, like 15 seconds on a 6 or 4 minute cooldown?
6-minute
And then you have Divine Protection for Paladins, 42 seconds for 20% DR for 8 seconds. Like, get out of here. You have an immunity.
All right, let's be real for a second. Monk's defensive kit, not that bad. Like, really pretty good compared to a lot of other classes.
Well,
Fort Brew is tragically bad, though.
Well, let's talk about Dampen since we brought up the other defenses. Dampen is something where you don't even know how much you're going to get DR'd based on how much damage you take proportional to your effective health. And so it's like, oh, am I going to take 20% less damage when I pop this? Or am I going to take 50% less damage? Or somewhere in between? You never really know. And then also, Mistweaver and Brew don't have Karma. Karma's like one of the best defenses on Monks. So like, Brewmaster's sitting out there with just Dampen and Fort Brew basically as like an
Zen
option.
Med, Diffuse if you want
Zen
it.
Med,
We've got Diffuse.
Yeah.
I mean,
sometimes.
Cocoon's a personal. Nobody's ever called for Cocoon.
I actually have had tanks start calling for it because now it scales with our health. So usually I just use it on myself, but occasionally I do have tanks actually call for it. And I'm like, I don't have it. What do you mean you want it? So it's not that big of a deal anymore, but it definitely was bad in the past.
Have we thought about making it scale with the recipient's HP? Maybe that would make it
Yeah.
useful.
That would be nice for tanks with like 1,000,000 health.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be close to the 45% DR that SAC gives tanks, on a 1 minute CD.
Well, that's balanced because it hurts the paladin too, and paladins
yeah,
are capable of dying, so it works out.
True.
All right, well, somehow this is turned into a
Bash
complaint about
paladin?
monk podcast, which I'm all here for. I'm big fan of improving that class overall.
Well, I think we've had 0 of those, so I think that in 190 episodes we'll probably do one.
We do well from time to time. Me and Trell have had our complaint about monk segues in the past. Either way, though, we've got some 10.2 stuff to cover. But first, it's time for our flagship segment, Tip of the Week. My tip of the week is
flagship.
That's right. I've declared it a flagship segment. My tip of the week is not going to be that you can just declare anything a flagship; they can't stop you. But that would be a good one. My tip of the week, though, is log in and do the 10.1.7 quest line if you haven't already. If you're somebody who's going to play next patch, but you've kind of checked out of this season for whatever reason, first of all, log in and do the trading post for all the mounts and stuff. But you do want to do that 10.1.7 quest line because you're going to have to do it at the start of 10.2 to get into the Emerald Dream anyways, so may as well do it now. Trell, what is your tip of the week?
All right, mine has to do with Hardcore Classic, which I've been doing on the side.
I'm sorry, what?
For fun.
That's good.
It's kind of addicting. My Feral Druid is level 59. I'm 1 level away. But I lost a Warlock, and my tip of the week is you can macro the Light of a Loon, which is basically like a free Divine Shield if you're Alliance. You get to use it one time in your leveling process, so you have to like choose wisely. But you can macro Light of a Loon and then Hearthstone on the same macro, and it will like perfectly bubble Hearth right before your shield wears off. And I didn't know that, so I tried to do it without a macro, and I like barely missed the window, and then I died.
Tragic. That's cool though. Cool tip. Tattles, what is our clip of the week this week?
Do you guys want to explain dodging and blocking from behind? Because I think our friend Dorky might need some help with that one.
Well, okay, bears are among the tankier tanks from getting attacked in the back, but yeah, it's you can't dodge or block or parry or anything from attacks from behind you. Yeah.
Also, these mobs.
Yeah, you got wrecked.
There's some mobs in Everbloom, particularly these mobs. We got farmed by these mobs whenever we were doing this dungeon, right, Trail?
Yeah, I suspect that's what's going on here because Bear is not one of the tanks that, like Brewmaster, for instance, takes like 100% more damage if you turn your back to something. Bear is only going to take like 30% more, 20% more or something. So
I think Bear, last time I checked Bear, like maybe a couple months ago, its dodging was still like 35%.
Okay, yeah,
plus.
so I guess 50% more damage then.
Yeah, I mean, Bear does do a lot with dodges, but I mean, either way, if you're getting guaranteed hit, it's not good.
Yeah, good thing to be aware of.
Also, probably be aware of those mobs in Everbloom.
Yeah, that's the assistants, or apparently the assistants there towards the middle end of the dungeon, towards Archmage Soul.
All of the trash in front of the third boss is an absolute grind. I would pull them one pack at a time, probably.
Good call. Meg, do you have a tip of the week? Optional for guests, but if you've got one, fire away.
It's if you I don't know if I want to say this. If you play what you enjoy, you're gonna get bullied sometimes, but it's honestly a lot more fulfilling and fun. So if you can deal with the bullying, then you can play whatever you want.
That is heartbreaking.
Amen.
It's like, I could make this like nice, or I could be realistic. I don't know.
This probably the most brutal tip of the week we've had on this show, but it's good.
I will say, like, it's gonna be harder to pug whenever you're not playing Fodom, and that's just the reality of the situation. If you're making your own group and you have friends that you play with, it probably doesn't matter what you play.
Yeah, that's it is part. It doesn't need to be part of the calculus because it is an MMO, right? Like what your priorities are, which obviously all of us in our own groups and stuff should try and help make it less nasty to be playing something off meta.
I mean, it's always hard, right? Like, and especially once you start to push towards the higher end, or you start to do higher end raid content, say you're doing Mythic Plus at a higher level, even if you're like PvPing, it becomes also multiplicatively more difficult because you watch other groups that have like a Fodder meta composition, and they'll do things a specific way because a couple pieces actually enable it, and you're like, well, I don't have this button. What am I supposed to do here?
Well, I think that's sometimes part of the fun though, is like figuring
Yeah.
out the Uldaman disable tech for fighting the second boss, right? Like that is something that you don't get to discover and to figure out if you're playing a meta comp, because you're just going to yoink whatever the Echo comp does in there or whatever out of their runs, and I think it is extra difficulty, but it is also extra rewarding to do that on your own comp, which I think that's some of the best M plus seasons are the ones where a lot of comps are arguably really good, and then you have a lot of different good groups that are all kind of playing slightly different stuff and coming up with their own ideas instead of just everybody playing the god comp this season.
Season 1 Dragonfly is still one of my favorite seasons because of that
It was
exact
so good.
reason.
Yeah.
What a season.
The ability to be able to play everything is so nice.
The creative problem solving that happens that we're talking about is super fun. I always enjoy that.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about patch 10.2. One big discussion point, rather than being focused on like Mistweaver in particular, was just around healing in general. A lot of this is, Theun complaining on Twitter, and Theun complaining in Wowhead articles, and Theun complaining on Max's stream and stuff, or in
There's
podcasts
Automatic
or
Jack.
whatever.
Automatic Jack is throwing his hat in the ring too.
Yeah, that's true. So a lot of different perspectives have come out around sort of healing, whether we're healing too much or too little, right? Whether raid healing is too strong and spot healing is too weak, which is kind of my perspective, and how it differs between low end and high end play and raid and M plus. Broadly, do you have a side in that fight, Meg? Do you have a take on the healing debate of 2023?
This is maybe less of a healer take and more of an AUG take, but I started gearing Outlaw Rogue because I found healing to be like really unfulfilling, I guess. Like, I don't know really how else to describe it. It kind of just feels bad to be a healer because you look around and you see AUG just kind of buffing every healer if there's a hard check, and you're like, well, I don't actually need to know what I'm doing that much. I can just get, the AUG buffs from my forehead on my keyboard and healing happens and we're live. Crazy. But as much as I enjoy it, I think that AUG has kind of made it less fun, because then you have the problem where, okay, Augmentation Evoker definitely enables Mistweaver to go further because it brings things that I don't. There's a guaranteed less in the group, so that takes away that problem. You have the Soothe, you have the knockups, you have all that CC, you've got like the DR like Zephyr and stuff. So it's like, do I benefit from them existing even if they're not buffing me? Absolutely. Do I think that it's good for the game overall? Not really. So I'm gonna try DPSing to see how it goes, but like healing has just been super disappointing.
Do you think that AUG is the reason that it's not fulfilling, or do you think it's more endemic of like a larger problem? I think obviously augmentation is doing some pretty crazy stuff right now, even still.
I think it contributes to an issue where, like, with balance, the Paladin I don't think benefits from it as much, whereas Monk definitely does, because again, they bring the things that I don't have.
Okay.
So it kind of levels the playing field a little bit more, but it also creates its own issues.
Yeah.
I've been watching people try to do break the meta keys this week a little bit, and watching groups play without AUG is hilarious. Like, people are getting one shot on 25s, whereas they would live the hit on 29, 30, no problem with an AUG in the group. It's actually crazy to watch.
It's been I think I've seen, I think this is like not an unpopular opinion. I think Mega's tweeted about it a couple of times, and then I see some people reply being like, I want to be buffed by the Augmentation Evoker. I feel like I gain a lot of value out of being buffed by the Augmentation Evoker. I want to see my damage numbers as a tank be reflected by that I'm being buffed by the Augmentation Evoker. And I sit there and I look at that, I'm like, I feel like that's like, I feel like it's missing the point, right? Of what the AUG is supposed to be doing. The AUG is supposed to be supporting the group, not enhancing your damage to let you parse in that way. It's like, I don't know.
And that's how I felt initially too. People were like, oh, just make it so they don't buff healers and tanks. I'm like, I want to have fun too. But then I realized that it's, a little bit more harmful than it is helpful. And then I was coming at it from more of like, I want my DPS buffed. I don't care about the healing buffs. So
Yeah, because like so as a tank, particularly when you play Brewmaster or DK, Og
Yeah.
feels so good because it's much more
Yeah.
powerful relative effect on those specs than the others. So like, you know, as somebody who likes playing those specs, I'm, you know, I have that instinct as well of like, oh yeah, I like getting buffed by this augmentation evoker. But then you start looking at it, it's like, wow, I can do a 30 key with an augmentation evoker, or I could do a 25 key without one. Like that's not, like we are just locking something into the comp, and that's not good. That's never good.
yeah.
My latest gripe with Og has been I can't really tell in the moment how good an Og player is. I have to look at logs after.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
It's
that's
like-
my favorite part about it. My Og evoker can sneak into any kind of weekly content. They can't.
Yeah.
Nobody detects how bad I am at it. It's fine.
There's no way to see. Like
Stealth
you can
mode.
look at Evan Might uptime, sure, but you can't see stuff like how they use their pots and like when they use Evan Might, when they did everything and all that. At like the perfect time for damage amps. Like all that stuff matters a lot until you can't really see it until you look at logs.
All right, there was also changes to mana came in, and over the last little while, we got a question from Theun, who famous for complaining about healers on Twitter, asked, "How do you feel about the mana changes now that we won't have Chill Globe or Rashox?" He also tweeted recently this graph of him going on testing earlier today. Meg, how do you feel about the mana situation in 10-2? Have you felt this as well, or has it felt okay for
So-
you?
Mistweaver has gotten a lot of mana from Rashox, but also from our current tier set. But on top of that, we also have the reworked Mana Tea. So if you take away Rashox, you take away our tier. I think that we're actually pretty good with mana. I think that it also is a bit of skill expression on how you manage the Mana Tea. If you're drinking it down before the ramp and regaining and, you know, all the micromanaging that goes into it. I think that Mistweaver's in a really good spot, but I do know that there's other healers that are like, what am I going to do without Rashox? So I'm not worried about us, but apparently
sense.
Shaman is down horrendous.
Well,
I mean,
you can't be sure about that from a Theun tweet. That's those are bait half the time.
It's been so interesting because, like, when was the last time mana's been a real resource for most healers? Because I feel like they're more
Most
often.
healers.
Most healers. More often than not, it's like Mistweaver, Disc Priest, and Resto Druid use mana, and then the other healers don't at all, and they end a fight at 75% mana, and you're like, what even is the point of this resource? There literally is no point.
Dude, I key with you're queuing with a Holy Paladin, and I'm playing Innervate, and I'm just looking for a time to press that when the Holy Paladin is not at 100% mana, and it doesn't exist. The Holy Paladin is perpetually at 100% mana. It's a fake resource. I don't know.
I love in Mythic Plus sometimes you'll pull a boss with a Holy Paladin in the group, and they'll start the boss, and you'll be like, "Do you need mana?" And they're at like 25%. And they're like, "No, I'm good." And you'll end the boss, and they're at 50% mana, and you're like, "How did this even happen?"
You gained mana. Hang on.
That happens for Mistweaver right now too. You can
I don't
start at way
That's
lower
good.
than you finish.
Is it really supposed to be like that? That feels like it's wrong. But
Well, bosses are like single target, right? Like the damage is pretty like trash is where the damage sometimes really gets you by surprise, right? And where you need to panic spend mana.
I mean, even in raid though, like I was looking at something for Jailer because I was talking to somebody about it, and even on the Jailer there was multiple healers, and that is like a 13-minute long encounter, multi-lust like affair, and there was two or three healers for the world first kill of that boss that ended at over 60% mana. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but it was like I feel like there's something wrong with that. Obviously, that wasn't this extreme, but I don't know.
All right. Ooh.
Like, were Rashox and Chogo really the problem though? Maybe.
I think it would be a problem if we wore them into next tier. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
Those which Rashox was gonna even post the first nerf, I think, right? So I do think it's also part of the problem that the other new trinkets weren't exciting enough to overtake it too. But Rashox still being good, I think, would have been a problem.
I think it's good. I think it's good to create cool things. Like I think like tier bonuses and trinkets and stuff like that. I think are totally fine for them to create cool stuff and then like nerf it moving straight into the next tier to de-incentivize you to continue to wear it for the whole nother tier.
All right, we also had some dungeon tuning on this PTR build, get data mined, although I actually don't see much tuning. I see mostly just like texting or text clarifying. Was there any big nerfs or anything that jumped out to anybody from these?
I mean, it got classified as nerfs.
Yeah, I mean,
if
I
they actually nerfed Dawn.
I think it's mostly like if there's a few things that maybe functionally changed in here, but I think mostly they're just cleaning up some tooltips and stuff to be more readable. So maybe
I haven't
not
really
a whole
gone
lot
through
of
them yet
news.
because I
Yeah.
haven't done too much Dawn testing. I was kind of waiting for nerfs, and then I was going to go into see it in a more balanced state.
I mean, do you think they're gonna nerf Dawn, or do you think they're gonna buff the other dungeons?
Well, it's kind of unclear because I think last time we played on PTR, the season 2 scaling was still active. So like, if season 3 scaling was already in, I think the other dungeons would have been probably in a good spot, but Dawn would have been overtuned, Everbloom would have been overtuned. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I have to test it more.
All right, we also had nerfs coming into embellishments. A lot of different embellishments are getting 35% nerfs to their damage and healing, including Magazine of Healing Darts.
What is
Meg,
that?
were you ever a Magazine of Healing Darts enjoyer? This was controversial in my guild, at least.
Yeah, very early on when we were supposed to run 2 of them because they were like double dipping or whatever. But I only ever ended up crafting 1, and yeah, I'm not a big fan of the embellishment system outside of Spore Cloak. Like they're all so minor, and I hate the crafting system with a passion. So
Yeah.
the crafting system.
dude, it's so convoluted for no reason.
Yeah.
It is... Do you have people in your guild who craft stuff for you?
Yeah, we do now.
Okay. Dude, if you didn't, I feel like it is just the world's largest gold sink of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. The TLDR from this, though, is a lot of the good embellishments are getting a nerf. So Spore Cloak Stonks going up, and the new embellishments of next patch probably also that's a relative buff to them, which unsurprising. They're going to want those to be good.
Is Lariat not going to be fucking sick now, too?
Well, Lariat still scales with the number of gems you have, so...
Well, Lariat was already BIS for a lot it
is BIS right now if you have a lot of gems, but at the start of a new patch, you're not going to have a lot of gems, right? Yeah.
It's all good. You just never take anything out of your vault. You only collect
just
gems
socket
the
week
whole
1
entire patch.
Yep. That's a good move. That's let him cook. Hang on.
Just force your guild to give you gear, and you just continuously take sockets.
All right. Any other 10.2 topics anyone wants to discuss? Any of these? You put down some bugs here, Tuttles. Anything you want to talk about these?
I mean, the dungeons don't feel particularly buggy, right? I don't know. Like, there's been some like weird crit error stuff where it's impossible to finish some dungeon bosses or mechanics due to crit errors. I feel like more often than not, the dungeons have been okay. Megatrail, have you guys seen any like notable bugs?
I got punched on one of the bosses in Throne, just randomly. The squid on top of the guy's head, he just punched me and killed me one shot. Not really sure why.
Oh, is it a unit on another unit?
Yeah, because he jumped off at the end. So
There's no way.
Yeah.
Dude, it's like the last boss of Ruby Life Pools or whatever, where that guy will just clock
yeah,
you.
or he just gets you.
Love that.
Those mechanics are so cringe whenever that happens.
Yeah, usually they fix that, but hopefully they can get aware of that pretty quick. That's just because the tank can't target or do damage to it, so it's just getting healing threat and smacking Meg.
Yeah, I saw like the kind of floating combat text, like notifier about the threat, and I'm like, what's targeting me? And then about 20 seconds later, I got punched. So it was that.
Overall, how have you been feeling about the rest of the dungeons?
I never really played Legion too much, so like Dark Heart Thicket is kind of new to me. I heard that the last boss scaled very poorly with Tyran, but he also got some nerfs fairly early on, so I'm kind of excited to see how that goes. Lakecrest Manor is my favorite dungeon of all time, so I'm very happy to see that back. Even though it's not Awakened, I still love it. I'm mostly worried about like the Cataclysm ones and how they end up handling those, because we all know how Vortex went. So that's like my main concern, I think, is the old ones.
I mean, Temple of the Jade Serpent was a shit show too. Like, I think that.
Yeah.
I think that was worse than Vortex. Yeah.
I would argue that it was much worse than Vortex, but that was due to. I mean, they didn't get tuned. Like, I don't know what you're going to do. It didn't get tuned.
And I actually, admittedly, I really like Temple. I hated putting groups together for it because you needed the second dispel, and you needed the decurse, and I don't bring that. So it's like, what do? I have one free slot. If I want to bring someone that's off meta, and that's me, there's a problem there. So making groups for it was really bad. And obviously the first boss bugged out all the time. The biggest issue is just like in my opinion, the last trash pack where tanks would just get one shot no matter what type of tank you were. You're just on the floor all the time. So
Yeah, you had to be
That was the issue with
really,
next
really
inning.
aware to live that pack. That was insane. Also, I think both Kata dungeons have now had class requirements because Vortex, you pretty much have to have Shadow Priest for MDs throughout the dungeon. Jade, you had to have Curse Dispel and a second Dispel to live a high key. Yeah, hopefully that is not the case where this ends up.
I feel, and I needed to go through. I was DMing Karasis about it maybe a couple days ago, maybe like a week ago. I was wondering if he had data on like how many dispels were required in each dungeon and like what the dispel type was, because I didn't feel like there was any mass dispel requirements in these dungeons, but I did feel like dispel type requirements were looking a bit tough. Like decurse and poison dispel felt like there were a lot of, and then there were some diseases that were. I don't know if there was any diseases I saw were mandatory, but there was some pretty important diseases as well in a couple spots.
Oh, yeah, like I think we were talking about as the show started. Sorry about that, but I think we were talking about like a stacking disease, right, Meg? And
yeah.
Throne?
No.
In Throne, on the way to the squid boss, there is all those purple, or they're black now, but they were purple elementals. When the little ones die, they give you a stacking debuff that increases the shadow damage that you take by whatever percent. The highest that we saw was like 12 stacks, and my first thought was, I think bursting is shadow damage, and my second thought was, what else is doing shadow damage here? And I think it is the swell that the large elementals do, but I wasn't really able to tell because we kind of were chain wiping in that whole area. And it is a gauntlet, and the little ones respawn, and it's a lot of fun. It's great.
And
and we were talking about like bursting would probably scale with that. You just die to bursting instantly. But what about the new weapons too? Don't they do shadow damage to you?
They do Shadow Flame, which is
oh
shadow.
my god, they do
Oh.
shadow damage. Wait a second, I didn't even think about that. Ah, fuck.
Oh, any Shadow Word Death pressers as well.
Oh,
That's,
that'd be hilarious.
God, that would
hang
be
on.
funny.
12 stacks.
That sounds bad. All right, we have some Q&A questions to get to, but first we get to thank our supporters over on the Patreon for making the show possible. They include, this hunter buff kind of sucks for AoE, except in my raid since we have 6 hunters. I get it, one dungeon orc for each, that makes sense. Our Immortal Dawn run was thwarted by the Nox Spheres in the bridge. Never Nude, Ja, King of Skills, Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Chewy, Nasumi, who put a D's Nuts joke, but is never going to get me. I've never fallen for a D's Nuts joke in my life, so better luck next time. Salty Senny, Necros, Tankdill, Nevuk, Eevee, Year of the Spear is extended into 2023. Bless up. No Trick, I forgot I was sub tier. Diemat, Rework Mistweaver. There's one of your people, Veg. I heard Smolderon is really Megatron's illegitimate son. I can't wait for the Jerry Springer-like reunion cinematic.
What?
Don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Nyx, Delete Gaming is riding Bear to victory, and he's dead. What a special class. Gallic, Brusif, Dratnos Sharts Abyss. Hey Dratnos, when's the next Tech It video coming out? Pepe Hands. Any day now. M Sanity, Xena, Rogue is now good enough for Prague, but still bad enough to be sat for SLG. Bless up. Red Color, youtube.com/workbringer. Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Nevermore. Number 1 Simski for Trelsky. Lurka is leaving the East Coast for the West Coast. Does anyone have any recommendations for fried chicken over there? Milk, 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 milk. Zife, Pone. Windwalker monks deal with nerfs by rolling with the punches. Thesaurus.com is a powerful tool. The Marsh Hare. My raid buff is my great personality and good looks. I play Ellie Shaman. Sorry to hear that.
Holy shit.
Thank you for listening to
That's
the Titanforge podcast. Is brought to you by Daddy Dratty, Grampy Trelsky, and the Tettles Effect, TM. Big Head Small Brain, King's Honor Fellow Horde, it's me, your newest guild member, Juniper, Best X-Pack Ever, Husky Dog, Rat Run, Jatto and Honey Chunk Forever, Chauncey, that moment when your tank says, now where's my ranged at during Jade Serpent Dragon Boss and bricks your key, Feral Druids in the MDI, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, you don't have that yet? Boom. Sir Maticus, friend of the Gummels, new name there. The Small Mammal living in Dratnos' shirt, Sapphire. Oh wait, actually, quick break from Patreon shoutouts. I completely forgot the big announcement. Daddy Dratty will be main tanking for Liquid in the next Race to World first. More on that later, but let's finish this first. Oopsie daisy, where was I? Rework DKs, please. Blizzard, I will buy you an Xbox Game Pass. Bonus prediction, Game Pass will equal WoW sub after acquisition. I'm losing my raid to Neltharion Weak Auras and Wolfram Alpha Gamer. Thanks all for the support. All right, we've got some questions here.
Dude, this week got wild.
Yeah, people are putting some good stuff in there.
I thought those were some real ones.
All right, we've got our first question from Nigel McButler that says, since Megasett's on the show, I'd love some ideas for Monk, Class Tree, Caps, and Talents. Okay, we talked about this a little bit in the Mistweaver stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an open secret. The current Monk Class Tree is quite bedge in the bottom third and has scuffed pathing all around. You get a lot of power, but still never take the capstones. Yeah,
I mean, what would you do to take them?
I
Because,
agree
like,
with fix them. I don't know how. Meg, do you have any?
I think fixing is just replacing them, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they're totems. They can only do so much. I know that this is like a huge Mistweaver take because I know Windwalkers have it, but I want Guillotine as a like the AoE Todd. I want that as a capstone, but I know that it probably won't happen because of Brewmaster, and that might be a little ridiculous. But it would still be fun, and it would make sense to be, stronger than Tiger Statue at the very least.
I think that would be pretty big. Yeah, I mean, if they're gonna let Fort Brew affect all the other specs like they do, they might as well let Touch of Death do the same thing.
Yeah.
it would be very good for Brewmaster, but maybe that's fine. Maybe that's fine. I don't know.
I do think that
try it.
something that minor they could do in the meantime would just be to take all the statues off GCD. I think it's a crime that they're on GCD.
Yeah. I wish I'd take Expel Harm off too after the healing elixir change. It feels kind of bad to just smash the button and not have it go off.
True.
That was another big part of the 10.2 changes, right? Was healing elixir is now just a passive proc, and expel harm is now your button that you press, and they buffed it by a lot baseline, but made the talents that interacted with it a little bit weaker. How has that been feeling to play besides the GCD thing? Like, otherwise has it been working out reasonably well?
Yeah, like I was really worried about the change. I was like, I think I was probably the most vocal about a change that I've ever been, because prior to them announcing that they were going to buff expel harm, all they did was take away like agency, which I'm really against, especially on a spec that's super squishy to begin with. One of my best defensives half the time is having a full health pool, and healing elixir worked towards that goal a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was slightly confused with their wording when they said that they wanted to fix the button bloat, but all they did was replace it with a different button. So instead of pushing healing elixir, you're pushing expel harm, and I'm like, that's the same amount of buttons. Not really sure about that reasoning, but they also mentioned that they wanted to make the expel harm talent choices more enticing in the class tree, but I don't know where they think we're getting the extra points to spend that. We got like 1 extra point, but if you want like the good one, you have to take Fort Brew and the secondary Fort Brew point to get to Strength of Spirit, and it's like, okay, I just don't have that many points.
Yeah, I could drop some roll charges, but I'm not doing that.
Nope.
All right. Next question comes from Alton in Discord that says, can you please discuss the impact of class/spec utility on the M+ meta? Specs like Shadow Priest are not only brought because they do good damage, but because of Massive Spell, Mind Soothe, and PI. Other classes like Hunter, Warrior, and Warlock don't have great tools to impact a run. What can be done to help those classes and specs? And is the focus on utility healthy for the game in general?
I will say that, like, looking at Shadow Priest and looking at it like this is not exactly the best solution because it changes so heavily season to season, especially with the fact that we're getting 8 brand new dungeons. So some utility that's uniquely good in season 2. Like, I think Massive Spell was with Halls of Infusion, Oldemon. What else? Mind Soothe was mandatory in Brackenhide Hollow, for example, in Halls of Infusion. Like, with all of that happening, Priest was mandatory this season, but Priest is not mandatory next season by any means.
Yeah, I think the mark was missed on them nerfing Shadow Priest so many times, thinking it was just like their damage, and in fact, it was because every dungeon required Massive Spell basically, and some other things like that. But that's just like Tella says, a this season only kind of deal. It's kind of unique.
I mean, now for the question about Hunter, Hunter, Warrior, Warlock. I don't know. There's definitely not. There's a large disparity between classes that are good in 5-mans versus classes that are not good in 5-mans in regards to like what utility they have. And I mean, think about things like Rogue. Rogue has historically been great in 5-mans. Like, when are they bad? That kind of thing. I mean, Druid also kind of similar vein. Like, they're always good. Monk seems to always show up as well. Like, Windwalker in particular, it either ends up being giga broken or garbage, and there's no in between. But the utility definitely helps it excel.
I do think Hunter and Warrior are maybe the two that are most kind of systematically in need. But yeah, I think often people list utility of a good spec when a spec is good, and list the utility as the reason it's good, when often it's just a lot of the numbers.
I mean, dude, if Prot Warrior is OP this next season, people are going to bitch about Spell Reflect and Wake Rest Mana 100%. But if Prot Warrior is not OP, people will not say one thing about it.
Yeah, that's true. If Prowler will be the best tank if it lives the best, and then people will be like, "Oh my God, Spell Reflect's broken."
In Waycrest Manor, yeah, they will complain about it in Waycrest, but they're not gonna say shit. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the class tree revamp and the talent tree rework has actually helped a lot of classes. Because now, at least for DPS specializations, you're not picking as much between am I only doing AoE or am I only doing single target. You're able to have like a decent balance.
All right, our next question comes from Eddie O that says, what if they were to bring back scrolls back to help with the raid buff problem, but they had the caveat that you could only have one scroll active at once, so you can't super class stack, but it does help if your DH is missing one night or something like that. Interesting idea. I actually think this is a cool way to handle it. I've always been a big fan of scrolls. I don't know, Mega, if you've got a take on the old BFA scrolls and old like NG Res being better and stuff. If you want those back.
NG-Res.
Oh, NG-Res.
Yeah.
Dude, that thing killed me so many times. I guess I'm at the point where it's like, okay, I played a healer that, well, like BFA, okay, didn't have a party buff, right? We had Mystic Touch, but we didn't have Fort or Mark or anything like that. We didn't have the good ones, we should say. Don't have a B-res, don't have a lust. Why does everything that I have to be that much worse?
Drums.
Why does my res have to have a chance to kill me? Why does that have to? It's already worse. It's already a longer cast, and I have to be in melee to cast it on top of their body. Why can it also kill me? I don't understand why it has to be like significantly worse. Same with drums now.
I mean, drums is also the same thing too. Like, and for a class like Mistweaver or a spec like Mistweaver that doesn't have lust, or say your group doesn't have lust, you're playing down. Like you're playing at a significant disadvantage. It's stupid.
I don't know why we're punished for playing certain things. That's kind of the take.
I think that Blizzard views it differently. Blizzard views it as those classes bring certain things, but then we view it as we're punished for not having these things, or we're punished for playing the thing we wanted to play.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't know.
I do think getting to choose like one scroll would be good though, like just to let you fill whatever you were most missing.
That would be nice.
There's
definitely been times where I missed like one specific thing. Like, oh, I would have lived that if we had a priest for Fort, and then said I'm dead, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, last question comes from Shred in Discord that says, what are your plans for mains in 10.2? What classes would you recommend to others that are looking strong on PTR for both Raid and M+? Is there a class you wish you could do but isn't as strong as you would like it to be? I guess we could start with we'll start with Tettles here. I think Meg's answer is probably going to be the least surprising here, but Tettles probably also is it a chicken tier or how?
I don't know what I don't think it's chicken tier. If it is, then I'll play it. If it's not, then I'll end up on that Aug Evoker thing. I'm sure that thing is fucking broken.
Okay.
I think I don't know. I'm probably gonna do like a lot of Mythic Plus this season if I had to guess, and so I'll probably just, if there's a caster that's not bad, I'm sure I'll figure out how to play it.
Maybe start on the chicken, transition after.
Almost certainly, yeah. Like I think that's how in beginning of season always works, right? Like you start on your main and then you maybe play something else later.
Yeah.
Meg, is it? I know you said you were starting DPSing a little bit. Is that something you're looking to expand next season, or is it going to be another mostly Mistweaver tier for you? What do you think?
Should be mostly Mistweaver. I'm definitely still going to raid on it, and I'll do keys and the guides and everything that I usually do. But I do really want to take like a decent shot at Rogue. I like the idea of Rogue because I know it's gonna be high APM. That's kind of like Monk. Like it's not too much of a difference because I can't do casters. But I would also like to get into shot calling, and I don't think I would be able to do that as a healer. Maybe as a ranged healer, but definitely not as Monk. So I want to expand as a player more.
Yeah. Holy shit, dude! You were made Drill so happy.
Multi-role shot caller. Let's go. We need more of those in NA.
Trell, how about you? What are you looking to play next year?
I'm actually waiting to hear from my raid team what they want me to play. I'm like the flex melee player right now. And
are you not tanking again?
Garbage. So no, I'm back to DPSing again.
God bless.
How long?
So lucky.
3 weeks?
Yeah, we'll see.
45 minutes until your tank quits again?
Well, I actually played some Unholy the last month, and Unholy is a really fun class to play in raid right now. Although its damage profile is changing drastically, so we'll see how it ends up. But yeah, I don't know. These days, I can just play whatever melee, kind of short notice. It's a good time.
How's your Havoc Demon Hunter play?
I haven't looked at the new Havoc too much yet, but it looks really fun. I like the new damage windows with multiple ammo auras. Sounds pretty cool.
That shit is giga broken right now.
Yeah. I'm looking at maybe Brew or DK or something. I don't know. It's going to be whatever fills a raid buff in the tank spot for my raid. And then for M+, no idea. Whatever's fun, whatever's cool, whatever's good. I would like to play Vengeance, but Havoc looks so good that I don't think I'll get to play Vengeance in raid. But Vengeance looks really fun too.
Are you ever going to be able to get out of tank prison, man?
Oh,
I
no,
remember forever you guys.
Yeah, you've been there for so
forevermore damned to tank jail, I'm afraid.
Dude, I hope
maybe not in M+,
somebody
though.
could go.
I don't know.
I hope somebody could go back through and find like the podcast where we talk about you swapping your role to tank and you being like, it's just a temporary thing until my guild recruits a new tank.
It's over. Yeah, I should have known it was over from then. Never
4 years
was
later,
like-
we're
It's
still
like 100
here.
episodes ago.
Yeah,
No,
more
it's
than that.
probably
More.
150 episodes ago because that was after Eternal Palace, right? Which is like,
Right around when we were starting. Yeah,
yeah, right.
we
as
started in
the
Crucible
podcast.
Storms, I think.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So it's literally been like 4.5 years, man. That this guy's been tanking temporarily.
It's been a temporary. We've been extended. It's been indefinitely extended. Okay.
Oh no.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's
Actually-
the. Good.
I was just gonna say I got out of tank prison within months somehow. It's a miracle.
Out on early
yeah, go
release. Out on parole. That's good. All right, that's our last question. That's the last thing we have. Except Megasett, is there any place people can find you or content you want to promote or something? Any channels or stuff?
Yeah. I am on Twitch and YouTube and Twitter, all under Megasett for everything regarding gaming. I also have an alt channel on YouTube that's just Megasett clips. It's basically just like full runs of keys, no commentary, all of that fun stuff.
I have a
Awesome.
question. How does the Clips
Yes.
channel do?
It's pretty new. I
Okay.
just started it like a couple months ago, and it does pretty well. Mostly
Okay.
because we all know how the algorithm hates like 40-minute videos when you're normally doing like 10-minute videos. So
Yeah.
it's pretty much just full runs. I was gonna put clips there, but then the shorts thing kind of kicked up, so it's just full VODs on that channel.
Okay.
That way, I'm not just like putting out 40-minute videos 7 times a week on the main channel.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we used to put this podcast
Smart,
on our
smart.
individual channels, and I was always like,
we
Yeah.
would always call it a, what would we call it? An algorithm sync.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
a little algorithm catastrophe.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
All right, well, that is going to be the end of this episode. Thanks again for joining us, Megasett. It was great to talk with you, and we will be back next week is the plan. No, the break was not actually going to happen. We should be here next week unless something goes wrong. So,
Allegedly, we might have a trivia episode with Squishy at some point.
okay,
Within the
Awesome.
maybe, potentially, maybe. We'll see.
but yeah, that's it for us. Bye, everybody.